council study session for Monday, March 26, 2018. We have some presentations and staff reports this evening. Our first presentation is from the Mid-Continent Public Library. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council. In November 2016, the Mid-Continent Public Library was fortunate enough to pass Proposition L bond issue. Though the city doesn't directly have a role in that, it certainly benefits the community and aligns with our strategic plan goal of improving the quality built environment and providing nice amenities for our residents. So Director of the Mid-Continent Public Library, Steve Potter, reached out and would like to update the council and the community on the status of those projects moving forward. So at this time, I'd welcome Mr. Potter to the council meeting.
All right, thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here and great to update everyone. And let me just ask technically how this works. Do I just ask you all to advance the next slide, or how will that work? Or is this a clicker, or is this a, I wasn't sure if this was a tape recorder or what this was. Okay.
We got that too.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Thanks a lot. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to come and update you all on the things that are going on at Mid-Continent Public Library. I always like to start off with this slide just to illustrate a little bit about Mid-Continent Public Library, because you all know about your branches and your part of the community, but we do have just under 800,000 residents in our library district, about 1,400 square miles, 35 locations, 9 million checkouts, 4 million library visitors, and just under 500,000 people with registered library cards. And so we are one of the largest political subdivisions in the state of Missouri. And so we are more than just your neighborhood public library. Now, in terms of Proposition L, we really did bring forward 4 primary promises that we are making to the public around Proposition L. Access, how can we provide better access to our library customers? Improvement of our buildings, how can we improve customer experience in our library buildings and give the people what they want, who want to spend a lot of time in a third space, not necessarily their work, not necessarily their home, but a third space. Improving our collection, how can we strengthen the collection of books, movies, music, and the online content that people are looking for in using their library. And then services, how can we enhance and strengthen our library. So I want to start off with access, first of all, and just highlight one of the things that we did. Actually, this was going to be breaking news for you all, but unfortunately there was an ice storm and I couldn't come and give you that information. So this has been up about a month now, and this is our new website. So we redesigned our website. Our website was about 8 years old, which in technology years makes it, what, about 56 years old or so? And so we were able to do a lot of interesting things. There's a single sign-on now where you can sign in a single way, and then you don't have to put in your library card 100 different ways. It has responsive design, and that's what the 2 images are supposed to be illustrating, that if you look at it on a cell phone or look at it on a tablet or on a big screen on a home computer, it actually sort of resizes itself to make it easy for you to use. Better federated searching, so you can do a single search in our little search box and it just automatically searches all of our databases and our magazines and our programs and everything all at once. And another thing that doesn't have to do with our website is we did enhance our hours of operations throughout our library system. So now I believe there are 21 libraries in our library system that have Sunday hours, whereas just 8 years ago I think there was 1 library that had Sunday hours. So there's a lot more access to the library collection, physical, and better access now digitally through our website. Buildings, and this is really the one thing that I wanted to really underscore to you all here in Independence tonight, and that's what we're doing with the Midwest Genealogy Center and our Midwest Genealogy Center Community Hall. As you might remember, this was built in 2008. It's about 52,000 square feet. We're going to look to relocate our back drive so that we can build a new community hall to the south of our existing building. It'll be about 15,000 square feet in new space. There'll be a catering kitchen there, which will allow us to have day-long conferences and events, which are very important. It will connect to the existing facility. It'll have an independent entrance, though, so that it doesn't necessarily have to be open the same times as the genealogy library. It'll be built in our initial stage. There will be operating walls and flexibility that will allow us to have one big space or many small spaces, and I'll show that on the next slide. Our current proposed budget is just a little bit over $5.5 million for that. And so this slide kind of shows you what what the full built-out space will look like. It's showing in theater style right now with with a built-in stage, which will always be present, and then the theater style seating will hold about 400 people theater style. With reinforced sound, you can also see the dotted lines that are throughout, and the dotted lines represent the movable partition walls, which will allow this to break into 4 individual rooms as well as the large room. Catering kitchen in the back, as we mentioned, reception area that's there, connecting to the actual library. Now, one of our goals is to have this open in 2020, actually before 2020. In 2020, the Federation of Genealogical Societies will be having their national conference here in town, and so we want to make our space available for pre-conferences and things like that, which will help in general tourism as well. One of the things that is it's not a competition, and it's never a competition, but one of the things that we do point out is that in general, we usually have a higher door count than the Truman Library. We are one of the most visited sites in the City of Independence, and people come from all over the world to research at the Midwest Genealogy Center. So being able to have this facility where we can sponsor conferences and day-long seminars and weekend-long seminars where people will have to stay overnight, and the husband comes with the wife, and maybe the husband does the genealogy and the wife plays golf and across the street. All of those sorts of things will certainly be good for the City of Independence and for the region. So going to the next section, collections and more books. We did increase our collection budget by 13% following the passage of Proposition L, so buying a lot more materials. We also purchased access to the entire Kansas City SAR digital archive, which means you can go all the way back to the beginning, first published edition, all the way to present, and get information about the local paper of record for our region, which up until this point in time was not possible. You could find things on microfilm, but in order to actually get digital images was very, very difficult. We've also been working on the Jackson County probate files, which we're actually very proud of this. We actually, as the probate court has no longer needed certain back files, we've been taking those files, scanning them, and making those available at the Genealogy Center, which is just an incredible wealth of information. If you ever want to know what a casket cost in 1956, we can tell you through these probate files.
How much was it?
Well, I can't tell you right now. I'd have to look that up. That's what good librarians do, is look things up. So then the last of our ABCs was services, and many more services than you even know. So we've started a partnership with a student e-card account with the Independent School District. So what this means is that when students went to enroll at the school district, parents had the option of opting into an electronic account, which gave all children in the school district access to our digital e-books, e-audiobooks, digital content, just by using their student ID and their student ID, and all those things that they know automatically. So no overdues on this, and certainly gives people a lot of access. This was a trial that we did with the Independent School District and North Kansas City School District, and we'll be rolling this out to our other school districts as we're able to go. Career Online High School, which I think you know is where we are able to provide adults who don't have an accredited high school diploma. They can go through the library, get an accredited high school diploma and skills training, which we do offer that free of charge for people who just go through our process. Square One Small Businesses, that for the last 2 years in a row, Mid-Continent Public Libraries has helped launch 45 small businesses through the Square One Small Business Initiative, and we're continuing to work to do even more with that. And then, of course, Woodneath Press and the Story Center. The last time I was here, I was telling you about the book, The First Beverly Hillbilly, that we published. And we are continuing to publish more books and helping people tell their story. As we like to say at the Story Center, everyone has a story to tell, just not everyone's ready to tell it. And so we actually help people with programs and services to help them tell their stories. And so a couple of really great events that I want to make sure you all know about that are happening in Independence. The first one is Lit Up, which is Books and Arts for the Next Generation. This is a teen festival on May the 12th at the North Independence branch. You can find out more information from litup.org. This is really sort of a for teens by teens program. It was actually pitched to us by a 14-year-old who came to us and said, we really need to do this. And she's put together an incredible list of authors and artists to be part of this program. And I mean, she's a real go-getter. I mean, there's a picture of her on her website with Carla Hayden, the Librarian of Congress. I haven't even met the Library of Congress, but somehow she's managed to meet the Library of Congress. So you need to come and see this and see how these teens are going to be engaging with arts and literature for the next generations, and it'll be there at the North Independence Branch all day long. The other thing is the Henning visits. So promoting the first Beverly Hillbilly book. Carol and Linda Henning are both coming back to Independence on May the 11th and May 12th for programming to support the first Beverly Hillbilly book. I believe that on Friday night, the Jackson County Historical Society is going to have a dinner and a meeting where you can buy a ticket and get a copy of the book and hear all kinds of fun stories from early days Independence and early days Hollywood with the Henning sisters. And then we'll have a program going on as well somewhere on Saturday. So those two important events coming up in Independence in the not too distant future. And with that, that concludes my update on some of the interesting things that are happening at Mid-Continent Public Library, but more specifically Mid-Continent Public Library in Independence. Happy to answer any questions, except for how much a coffin costs.
Okay.
Sorry.
Steve, thank you for being here. As city manager mentioned, the Proposition L, the city wasn't directly involved with that, but that was such an important thing for our community, as were the school bond issues and school levy issues that were approved around the same time, and all those things that are approved by the voters are positive things for our community. So thanks for your board and your organization for moving that issue forward successfully. Sure. And makes tremendous investment in our community by the passage of that. I know another goal is to have another facility in the eastern part of Independence. Is there any news you can share on that?
Only a little bit of news. I've been talking with the superintendents, the various superintendents of the Blue Springs, Independence, and Fort Osage school districts, talking with them a little bit about growth projections and things of that nature. Since those three school districts are kind of the ones that we'd be talking about in Eastern Independence. Right now, our target, there are 14 work packages in our construction. Midwest Genealogy Center is number 1. If I'm not mistaken, East Independence is number 14. And so we're kind of spreading the love. Yeah. But right now we're just trying to figure out, from talking with the superintendents, talking to Mid-America Regional Council, planning councils, folks like that, where exactly in East.
It needs to be, yeah.
Yeah.
One of our big objectives through Independence for All, and certainly one for 2018, is workforce development. And I just want to say, how much of an important partner the library is in helping us with the workforce development initiatives. As you say, the small business services you provide, certainly the high school diploma services that you provide, but also, that's where people go when they're looking for something. To be able to utilize the computers and do their, resumes, job searches, all those types of things. So, we'll certainly be engaging you as we continue to develop our plans on workforce development.
I was at a meeting in December, and one of the things that I was told there is that 50% of all employers will be paid off of 1099s by the end of this calendar year is what the projection is. So what that means is there's a lot of independent contractors out there that are trying to figure out what is that little bit of additional information I need in order to get the contract. And the library is a great place to go to get that little bit of information, whether it's learning Microsoft Project or learning a new programming language or something like that. We have instructor-led classes that you can take on the internet, so you can take them at your own skill and your own speed and learn just this much more so that you can get that contract. And all of our people are very happy to teach folks about that. And hopefully I'll have another really important workforce development announcement to make in about 6 months. We're still working on some details on that, but this is going to be a big one.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or questions from the council? Yes, Councilman.
Just wanted to thank you for coming tonight, and congratulations on all these new things that are coming down the road. I really think the new genealogy auditorium community room is going to be busy probably as soon as you get it done. It's going to be a great space for a lot of different activities. I've been to several there in the small little room that's in the back. It's always been packed, and there's never been quite enough space, for everybody at some of those historical things that they've had there in the past. So I'm looking forward to that, and thank you for sharing with us. You're a great resource for people looking for jobs. I know there's a lot of companies and employers that have done research through the library too. So you've got all the statistics. You're a great partner for EDC and all the other economic development folks around the county and all 3 counties really. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for those kind words. And certainly one of the things that I'll say, many of you may have in one point in your life run across Steve Rolling, who used to be with the Healthcare Foundation and the Kauffman Foundation. He's a member of our library board. He was also on board at the Kauffman Center when it first opened, and not the Performing Arts Center, but the Conference Center. And so he's been giving us invaluable information about how to make sure that we don't make some mistakes in terms of that, because he said there will be incredible community demand, and there will be an opportunity for the community to be able to use this as well as the library. So when the library is not using it, we're hoping that the community will want to use it for various meetings and information sessions.
Very good, thanks.
Yes.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks. Next, we have Imagine Independence 2040, a community vision. This is our comprehensive development plan. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, certainly an exciting night. Independence for All, your strategic plan has, of course, as one of its goals, growth, and I would say a cornerstone of that goal is our need to update our comprehensive development plan, which, of course, will guide future development and future land use planning for the city. Somewhat historic. It's been 24 years since this has been updated, so we're part of certainly an important process here. And we're at the culmination of that. So tonight it's my pleasure to introduce Assistant Director of Community Development, Charlie DeSalle, who will present this to you in conjunction with our consultant. Thank you.
Good evening, mayors and members of the council. Quick getting this presentation started up here. Okay. Yeah, as Zach had mentioned, we have a comp plan that we're running under currently that was adopted in 1993. We are well to the point where all the implementation measures in that plan have been implemented. We did an audit of our comp plan back in the fall of 2015 and realized it was time to get a new plan put out there. So as you're aware, from the staff standpoint, we've been working on it quite a bit, and we've used the services of Shockey Consulting as well through that process. So I'm not going to go through much of the community engagement that we did. We had a presentation back in October to City Council that went over a lot of this stuff. What I will do is kind of get to the start of our presentation here. I'll hand it off to Lauren Garrett with Shockey Consulting, and she'll kind of go over some of the aspects of the plan, and then I will come back and discuss the land use section.
Good evening. Good to see everyone again.
Good to see you.
Fix this. All right, so I'm going to go over how the plan is organized, and we started with this graphic that shows how the strategic plan and the comp plan are separate but have similar themes. And so we know there are plenty of plans out there and we don't want them to go to the side, but they are incorporated and affect each other. And so these themes that we identified were connected, welcoming, and distinctive, and those were brought up at the City Council strategic planning sessions as well as in the public engagement we did. And then the topic areas are the different chapters we have in the plan. So the first theme is connected, and so this means connected physically and socially. Physically, thinking about walkability and how people move around in the city, and so making sure the trails and sidewalks are connected, and they connect to activity centers, or they connect you to your job, they connect you to a grocery store so you can go shopping. We also want to see people connected to each other in the future. So neighbors knowing neighbors, people getting to meet each other at community centers or events and festivals. And different sides of the city are connected to each other, and that's through transportation networks and through social events. Then the next theme was welcoming, and this just means welcoming all people of all abilities and backgrounds. And so this can be welcoming neighborhoods, but also welcoming corridors. That was stressed a lot in the strategic planning session, but was reinforced again when we went and did public engagement for this comprehensive plan update. And so that can be helping attract families and visitors and helping them get around the city through signage and wayfinding. You already have some of that, but people want to see more of that in the future. And then the last one is distinctive, and this came out a lot in the public engagement. We were listening to people, and over again, this is home for them, and this is what independence means to them. It's Truman's legacy, it's shopping, sports events, entertainment, all the community events and festivals and the attractions that you have. And so you want to capitalize on these and show people who are visiting what you have to offer, but also residents. Some people who live here don't visit places like that. So you want to connect to both of them, and independence is unique in that way. So the first chapter is community identity, and so that's the one that relates most to the theme of welcoming and distinctive. And so this is the part of the vision in the strategic plan that relates to this comp plan. So that's where you'll see the overlap, and we've included it on there, as well as the goal and then the measures for success that are from the strategic plan. And so ways you'll measure how you're achieving this would be improving visual appearance of major commercial corridors and historic sites, improving condition and maintenance of public infrastructure and facilities, as well as increasing population. And it's kind of hard to measure something that's intangible like community identity, but these are some of the ways that we thought aligned with the strategic plan. The public engagement we did, we just touched on a few of the events and festivals that you have, but there are so many, and in the future they want to continue to have these events and have people interact with each other. And so in each chapter we have a section that has guiding principles, and this is just an overarching view of making sure when you're making decisions in the future that it relates to these guiding principles. The tools and policies are going to be more specific, but the guiding principles are overarching ideas for anything that relates to community identity. So the way this plan reads is you can read different chapters, or you can go through the whole thing if you'd like. And we also highlight relevant plans in this section too. Like I mentioned earlier, this is not the only plan. It relates to, say you have a Fairmount Business District plan, and we highlight other policy documents as well. The next chapter is businesses and jobs, and so during the strategic planning session, we talked a lot about 21st century jobs, and then we also talked about businesses and jobs in the comp plan update. And here we have the vision as well as the goals and measures of success from the strategic plan. But mainly what we thought of here in businesses and jobs is not what is going to be the next sector, but diversifying. So you don't want to replace and just have one main drive for your economy. You want to have a variety so that way you're sustainable. And these are some of the sectors that were mentioned in the KC Rising document. That's a regional plan, so those were included in here as well. Like in before, there's the guiding principles that are for businesses and jobs, and then more specific tools in the tools and policies section. Then the next chapter is neighborhoods and housing, and so this one we spend a lot of time on. People want to see vibrant neighborhoods, and they want to see walkability, like I mentioned before, but you have the housing stock here, so that's a positive. Moving forward, it's just maintaining what you have and then developing the housing needs of the future, and having a range of housing so you can attract different types of people and different income levels, and just the housing cycle that for people who are downsizing, you have something for them. For people who are elderly, you have housing for them so they can stay in their home. And so you have a strong foundation, and it's just going forward in the future, how do we maintain what you have and work with your neighborhoods and keep them unique and distinctive. And here are some of the guiding principles for this chapter. And then we also have more specifics further in the document. The last chapter is public facilities, and this is huge. This is your infrastructure, this is everything. And it was important to the community as well. And so we included those goals and measures of success in there for how things are improving That could be visual appearance of your commercial corridors, and then improving condition and maintenance of public infrastructure, as well as improvement of perception of safety. And we have the guiding principles for this one, and then we also talked a little bit specifically about SEPTED and crime prevention through design. So that's one idea that we would have in the tools and policies. And then the last chapter is land use, and Charlie's gonna go through that for you guys.
Thank you, Lauren.
As Lauren said, the last chapter we have in the plan here is the land use section. This is really going to kind of tie all those other sections back into really zoning decisions that both the commission and the council make. So through this, I think you'll be able to see a lot of the same themes in there, but I'll quickly go over some of the guiding principles in this document. The first one is to protect and enhance the viability, livability, and affordability of our residential neighborhoods. Really continue to build on those neighborhoods and keep them meeting those standards. I'm sorry. Second one is to ensure that opportunities for convenient and concentrated commercial development occur in the city, both at a regional scale and at the local scale. Next one is to make sure that the physical development and form of the city match the historic setting and the natural environment. Make sure that we provide adequate areas for future industrial growth. Make sure that we are maintaining open space and natural preservation within our land use decisions. This one is to encourage the concept of mixed-use development within there, something similar to what Newtown Harmony is, and encourage that in other areas of the city. Foster redevelopment opportunities within the city. This really applies to what we'd say Western Independence, a lot of areas in there. And you can see even on the screen here above, that's a picture from the Truman Winter Road plan right by Van Horn High School. To make sure that we connect activity centers and neighborhoods through trails, walkability neighborhoods, stuff like that. Make sure that the provide physical accessibility throughout the city and connect people to places. And then finally, to establish and maintain housing and transportation, communication, and utility system which support the land use decisions. So with that, we have what we have proposed for a land use map here above. This is a new land use map compared to the one that was adopted in 1993. On this, you can really see currently on our current comp plan, we have commercial corridors built up and down the city along Truman Road, 23rd Street, 40 Highway, Nolan Road. This one we really kind of cut back and really focused on some key transportation intersections, those commercial nodes that we call them throughout this plan, and really cut back some of the commercial areas with that. However, you'll see here on the next screen when you compare the land uses that we have in the 93 plan and the current plan, commercial, we actually only decreased by about 1% of total land use, really increased on about 3% on residential, and then created a lot more areas that are planned for industrial. So that's the big jump in here. Next few slides go over the land use categories that we have. I think the biggest thing to point out here is that the current plan has 25 different land use categories. We nearly cut those in half. We have 13 in this plan, so a lot easier for the citizen to understand what the actual categories mean, and really here you can see again they're really focused on residential, commercial, industrial, and then a few other topics that we have in there. So with that, I will turn it back over to council, and if there's any questions, both Lauren and I would be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Charlie. Thank you, Lauren, for being here. I will say once again, the award-winning Imagine Independence Comprehensive Plan, thanks to Shockey Consulting for their tremendous job on the citizen engagement portion of this. We have a wonderful citizens committee that just brought such great expertise and creativity and imagination to this process. How about that picture of Englewood, Councilmember Perkins? That looked pretty nice.
That was a nice shot.
Yeah.
That was a nice shot.
That looked pretty good. And the shot of the future Newtown Harmony looked pretty good too. So, I think it's exciting to think about really what this envisions. We think about it mostly as the land use and sort of guideline for development, but I think you've done an excellent job in incorporating the values of our community and really stretching people to be creative about their thought about what we think independence and want independence to be in, between now and 2040. So thanks for the great work on this. I'm so excited that we're doing this. This is something that we've been working on, Councilmember Doherty, since we came onto this council together, and we're told it doesn't need to be done, it can't be done, it's not necessary, so an exciting night for sure. Comments or questions from the council?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Perkins.
to go along with those lines, I had a working lunch a couple of weeks ago down at Palominos, and we were talking about Fairmont specifically. What can we do down here? And I told them, just wait, the timing's coming to have these discussions on some zoning, some land usage. We have some unique ideas and thoughts and able to think out of the box with this type of planning. So this is good and timely, and looking forward to moving on this.
Yes, Councilmember Lucy.
So what's next?
Next week, actually, we'll have a resolution on your agenda to adopt the new comprehensive plan. So we really wanted to get this in front of council tonight, so we can actually make a presentation on it as opposed to next week.
Have any kind of meetings with the public been scheduled to introduce them to it and have them buy into it?
Yeah, we can certainly look into that. Again, we had the public outreach meetings back
Right,
in
I know
June and
that.
July. This has been on our website now since we've had the draft plan probably compiled now for a good month, I think, on that, and we've had that out there for review as well. We do have an email list that we've built that we've pushed some of that stuff out on as well too, but yeah, we can certainly look into once
It's
it is
just-
adopted to have meetings.
It's a big document, and rather than have it gather dust on a shelf because no one has looked at it, I would really encourage neighborhood type of meetings, or even something in front of the Planning Commission that would disseminate this to the public so that we have buy-in from them.
Yes.
I think that would make it much more
And on your
successful.
last note there, I will note that we did make a presentation to the Planning Commission at their last meeting, and they are recommending approval of the plan, and that'll be built into your agenda item next week.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Robertson.
Thank you, and thank the committee for all the time involved and all the effort and thought, because it looks very comprehensive to me, and it looks like a good structure and backbone for us to plan for the future on. There's always going to be, some changes, but this really creates kind of a blueprint, at least for us to look at the future, and that's great. I think it's a fantastic document. And so I'm looking forward to us voting on it here in another couple weeks. So thank you, and thanks to the committee.
Charlie, let me ask a question. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, since your department is the one that works with the plan continually, tell us, to Councilmember DeLucy's point, I mean, how does the public interact with this plan? How does the development community interact with it? Maybe give us a little peek behind the curtain, so to speak, of the day-to-day, how you and the staff, utilize this plan throughout the year.
When, we'll have customers that come to the counter frequently to ask, hey, I want to do something in this part of the city, how does it work with what you envision? We'll use this document to really guide those types of discussions. One thing that we will use this for, again, in our staff reports to both the council and to the Planning Commission, I actually have built into those staff reports now how those zoning items actually meet the comprehensive plan, and have frequent discussions in that staff report that say it meets these principles, or on the other side, it doesn't meet these principles. So we'll really use that to help guide zoning decisions from the staff standpoint. But again, the biggest thing is really when those customers call in, when we have pre-development meetings and stuff like that, really discussing with them, how does what you're proposing actually meet what we intend here in this plan?
So in my mind, really, the charter, our code, and our comp plan are really the three documents that really set our policy, set our budgeting, set how we interact with the public, how we interact with customers and people doing business in our city. So we've been using this plan since 1993, and it did its job. It's intended to last a long time, and it did, but clearly our city has changed considerably since 1993. So what's it, I mean, I guess my question is sort of like, what's it like when you are bound to what the comp plan lays out to some respects, and
Yeah.
especially, you know, in planning and zoning?
Yeah, and it's definitely always going to be a living document
Yeah.
too. So, you know, if we look at the principles that are built within there right now, in 10 years down the road, we show, okay, we've completely met these, or the city's going a completely different direction now. Again, we can bring forward amendments to that plan.
Okay.
You know, we can, again, go out and create a new plan at the same time. But, you know, if there's areas of town where the land use map that I showed on the screen there above, where it doesn't meet what somebody wants to do, you know, they can bring forward an amendment to council, to the commission, and ask, hey, I want to have this use here. Are you guys, you know, do you think that it meets what the comprehensive plan envisions? So it's a living document. It's always up for change. It's not necessarily written in stone, so that's a good thing. But
It is used.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely
Yeah,
used.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yes, Councilman?
You really used your imagination here. I mean, these pictures are great. I was wondering, you know, if we could do that. I mean, to make it look like that. I suppose when they looked back and, you know, seen Da Vinci's flying machine, they had something to do with that, you know. So it doesn't matter how old it is. It's how it's adapted to when we're here. I mean, we got submarines now, the Jules Verne, you know, all these things come to pass.
Yep.
Let's do something.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Exciting. Our final presentation this evening is on the tourism mobile app. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, in the current fiscal year, one of the items that was approved for funding by the City Council is the development of a tourism mobile app to really add a more 21st century dynamic, unique feel, I would say, to the visitors to Independence and some of our historic sites. So as our historic sites will be opening next week, we wanted to inform the council tonight about the completion of that project, and here to brief you is Director of Parks, Rec, and Tourism, Eric Erfer.
Thank you, Zach. As introduced, Derek Erford, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. About a year ago, we actually started coming forward and talking about this app concept for tourism for two different reasons. One, it was to try to entice some younger folks to come in and use some modern technology to visit our historic sites. And two, to bring a new element to those that have been here before and experience those sites in maybe a different way. So since that time, we've had a team of both contractors that specialize in web development and game development, as well as our own local contractor for marketing, OA Creative, and the staff, of course, have been working diligently to bring this to fruition, and we are very, very close. So much so that we thought it would be time to bring this concept to you in a little bit more of a reality format, show you where we're at, show you what it is, show you what it can be, and then we'll go from there. So with that said, I would like to introduce Ms. Allison Mincher from ONCELL and Kellyanne Adams from Green Door Labs.
Thank you.
I'm Allison Mincher, and I'm from ONCELL, and we are mobile app developers. Excited to present this project to you. All right, so as Eric said, our project team consists of myself, Kellyanne from Green Door Labs, which is a game creation company, and Emily from OA Creative, and Christy from the tourism department. So if you were wondering what ONCELL is, we have this little video. Let's see. Run over and press play.
Okay.
Hope you guys can kind of hear that. So a little bit about our company. We have, sorry.
Good to know
We were
stuff
founded
there.
in 2006, and if you guys remember, there weren't too many smartphones around back then. Apps weren't really popular. We actually got our start in doing cell phone audio tours for visitor destinations all over the country, and since then have evolved, stayed up with the technology, and really created a robust platform for mobile and web apps. So we specialize, like I said, in educational and mobile tour apps, museums, historical sites, cultural destinations. We've worked on over 2,000 projects, both here in the U.S. and in other countries. And a big moment in our company history, we actually acquired another company called TourSphere, based out of Boston in 2013, and we've kind of merged our technologies to really stay cutting edge and deliver the best features and the best platform. Here's just a snapshot of some of the clients that we work with all over the country right now. These are all live projects or ones that have recently launched. A longtime client of ours is the Harry Truman National Historic Site right here in Independence. So that was one of the first accounts that I actually worked on 7 years ago when I started with ONCELL. So it's nice to have another project here in Independence. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kellyanne, and she'll tell you a little bit about her company, Green Door Labs. That next one, yeah.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks so much for having us. We have had an incredible time today running around Independence. So I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. I have never had a trip in a mule cart before. That was pretty incredible. Like I touched a beaver pelt. Like this was a really great day. We had an awesome time. My name is Kellyanne, and I am the mastermind of Green Door Labs. And Green Door Labs is an educational gaming company. Been around for about 7 years now, and we build games specifically for cultural institutions. So we work with museums, libraries, cities, universities, and we interact with physical objects. So we're not necessarily a video gaming company, we're a location-based gaming company. And the purpose of the games that we build is for people to go to locations and engage with the content that's there. So a lot of the times when people think about games, they'll think about somebody who's glued to a screen, but in fact, the screen can just be a guide to have you engage with the content itself, and that's what we do. And that's why I was here today. So here are a couple of the games that we have built. We've actually been building fast and furiously this year. There's a lot of stuff that we just released a game for the Supreme Court of the state of Michigan and just released another game for the Peabody Essex Museum, Modern Art Museum. We're probably best known for a game called Murder at the Met, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Also just released a game this summer with the Smithsonian Castle. It's shocking how many people are finally understanding that games and interaction are a really great way to engage people. So it's exciting. You know, I started doing this 10 years ago, and people were like, games, what? You're going to sort of not give culture its credit, its due credit, the respect that it deserves. But in fact, people like to engage. They just like to interact with things. They like to be part of the story. ONCELL pulled me on for this project, and I was pretty excited about it because there's a lot of things to talk about. Harry Truman has always been my favorite, so he's been my man crush Monday online for many years now. We worked together a couple of times already, and so I knew the platform fairly well, and I understood the design parameters of what we were going to need to do here. You know, it needed to be something very open, fully accessible to everybody, ideally something that would be intergenerational, right? We want something that is going to let kids work with parents and grandparents, something that is going to let people use their devices because they're comfortable with their devices. You know, that's something else that I find is really fascinating. I call it museum lockdown. You know, sometimes you'll go into a cultural space and people actually get a little stressed out. They don't quite know what to do, right? And they're like, oh, I don't understand this. I'm not smart enough. I don't know history. I couldn't tell you what Harry Truman did. And when you give them a device and you give them some guidance, then suddenly they feel at home. You know, this is something they know, and they can be the hero. They can tell their kids, oh yeah, he did this and this and that. Let me tell you the story. So we're building things that can enable those types of interactions. And in fact, we even have a lot of prompts in there, but we'll say things like, give the phone to the person who has a birthday closest to June. Give the phone to somebody who's wearing blue, right? This concept of, look at each other, talk to each other, have discussions. So here are the steps that we like to go through. First one is just goals, resources, and restrictions. We always set design parameters for every project we work on. It's the most important step. Most important step actually is the first one, which is goals. What do you want, right? Like, what do you want a game to do? And that way you know if you won or not. Because if you don't know what you want, how do you know if you got it? So we spent a long time on that, trying to figure out, like, what actually do we want to get out of an interactive, out of an immersive experience here. And I think we really sort of drilled down on that sense of intergenerational connectivity. Based on our parameters, what are 3 ideas that we could potentially use? We threw a bunch of random ideas out there. Some of them were terrible. We actually ended up squishing 2 ideas together that were sort of my favorite. And we got to step 3, choose direction and drill down on the idea. You guys have 2 very clear brands that I think are recognizable all across the state, and that's Pioneers and Presidents. So that was our game. It seemed like a very easy direction to go. We wanted to do something with Oregon Trail because everybody's played Oregon Trail. Again, it's something that's very recognizable. I like to call it 16 seconds to Nevermind. When somebody looks at an app, you don't have very long to engage them before they get confused and they put it in their pocket. But if you engage them with a design that they've seen before, like, oh, Oregon Trail, I've seen that before. Oh, I get it, I'm supposed to do this. You have a better chance of getting them through to step 2, 3, and 4. But the problem was Harry S. Truman was not part of the Oregon Trail. So how do you combine the Oregon Trail and Harry S. Truman? The answer was time travel. Literally, we decided that you guys may not be aware of this because this is mostly the purview of the tourism department, but Independence, Missouri happens to be right on the cusp of a rift in the space-time continuum. Yeah, it's true. It's true. And so you guys just have warps in the timeline all the time, and it just mixes things up. You just never know what's going to happen. It's the job of the tourism department to put those back together, and it takes a lot of their time. So I'm glad you guys don't have to deal with that. That really, drives them nuts. So we decided to call upon our players to help us fix these mistakes in the timeline. And that gives us an opportunity to sort of be a little bit silly, like, oh, we hear that there is a statue of Queen Elizabeth in front of the Harry S. Truman courtyard, but that doesn't sound quite right. Like, who is actually there? There's a second president. We hear that it's Lincoln, right? Is that actually what it is? Please look, take a picture, make sure, verify, fix the rift in the time warp. We've created the game design document. This particular game, some games are linear, some games are randomized. Your game is sort of independently, it's an independent pathway. So essentially you've got 12 different paths that people can go through at any given time. Every time you go through a path, you earn a badge. The whole story behind it is that you wanted to be part of the Oregon Trail, but you don't have any materials. You don't have an oxen, you don't have a wagon, you've got nothing. So you've got to help Matt the trader earn these different pieces. And you do it, of course, by helping them fix the timeline, which is such a mess. So this is a way that you could go to each of the different locations at your own time, whenever you felt like it. And if you're able to collect some of the badges, doesn't necessarily matter which one, they're non-linear, then you can go to the tourism board and they'll give you your special badge. And you will get all of the resources you need, be able to continue on the Oregon Trail. Congratulations to them. So that was the way that we decided to sort of mesh together the 2 big themes that you had in a very silly story that has been lots of fun to write. So we have listed all the places that we'd like to include. We currently have 16 of them. So we've got 8 outdoor locations, and then we've got 8 indoor locations. And so the idea is that if you collect a certain number of badges, then you can go to the tourism department and say that you've won, but it doesn't necessarily matter if you have chosen the outdoor locations, which are free, or the indoor locations, which are paid, and that way it makes it more accessible to everybody. So if you wanted to do, like, say you're at the Bingham Wagoner House, there are challenges on the outside, and then it says, hey, do you want to go in? Here are the hours, this is how much it costs. We have some things that we'd like you to solve in there. Up to you. You could also go across the street to the CNA Railroad, and that's free and outside. So up to people how they'd like to engage. Yeah, so right now, so we wrote a lot of this off-site. You know, of course, I'm in Boston. And so luckily, with the help of these guys, we got as much content as we possibly could. Spent the entire day today running around, verifying everything, making sure that we had the content correct. But it's much harder for the indoor locations. So actually, I spent a lot of time in the different museums today, doing different possible challenges, activities, things that you could be doing inside the Trails Museum as well as outside. And that's where we are right now. So we are just about ready to go with our first 8 locations. All of our content and images are ready to be loaded into the builder. My artist is starting to work on our 8-bit badges and our 8-bit logos so that we look just a little bit like the Oregon Trail, but not too much. Yeah, and then we'll start working on the content for the indoor locations, and we'll go through the same process, you know, make our edits, add the images, and then we'll load the whole thing. The app should be ready to go within probably the next month or so.
Wow, great. Fantastic.
Thanks, Kellyanne. So Kellyanne took us through one of the major 4 components to this whole app project, and that was the game development. And what we're also doing is we're building some custom functionality. So part of wanting to make sure that we stay cutting edge and we deliver the features that the sites that we work with want to use, we have a flexible platform and we have a development team that's able to build custom functionality that might not currently exist. So we don't have any other apps right now on our platform that have games with badges. So that's a component that we're building. So Kellyanne alluded to how that's going to play into the game and how you can go to these different locations and complete the challenges to earn a badge. So I just kind of outlined here a little bit about, you know, technologically how the badge function is going to work. They're going to be stored locally, so right on the user's app, they can collect the badges as they earn these achievements, and the badges are really fun because they're going to be supplies that you need to complete the Oregon Trail. So that artwork is being drawn up now, but so that's one of the 2 custom features that our developers are actually building for this app. The second is camera integration with a filter component. So a lot of people are familiar with filters from things like Snapchat and Instagram. This isn't going to be quite that sophisticated, but it's going to be fun and interactive. So there's going to be a camera feature right in the app so that as you're taking the tour or playing the game, you can take pictures of these, you know, different sites in Independence with your friends, your family who's there with you. And then the features will just allow you to have an overlay over that. So it might be a geo filter, as they're often called, that would identify, you know, the Bingham Wagner estate or any, you know, location where you're going to be accessing that feature. Or it might be something fun like Harry Truman's hat, you know, and you put your phone in selfie mode and kind of line your face up to it. So that's going to be a really fun feature. The camera integration is definitely going to be available next month for our soft launch of the app. The filters, we're going to do up to 5 of those for this project, and we just have to determine exactly what those are going to be, and those are going to be available as well. So the third major component of this project is what we call our quick start or our app build, and that's really just when clients give us content and we put it together and we build this beautiful app to your specifications. So that process really starts with an idea, a wireframe where we draft up exactly what you want to be in your app and then how we're going to organize it, how we're going to present that information. So actually, when this project came to us at ONCELL, we were given this wireframe of this is what we want our app to be, this is how we want it to look and what we want to have in it. So we already had a really great guideline to work with on how we were going to structure our content, how we were going to put everything in there. So we have regular project check-in calls, like pretty much a week doesn't go by that we're not on the phone with each other, you know, hammering out the details of the game and then making sure that we have everything that we need to get the rest of the app built. We have something called a test drive URL, which is basically just the app as it's progressing. So you can test out all the content via this temporary website that's on our test server. But it functions the same exact way that the final app will. And that gives us a way to just have ongoing updates and get feedback and be able to make changes to make sure that we're building it exactly to your specifications. So just a couple little screenshots to show where we're at, what we're doing right now. So we're bringing folks into the app, and then we've got really these 4 main experiences in the app. And one is going to be to tour the uniquely Independence destinations. And this is an audio tour, a location-triggered audio tour throughout Independence. So at the destinations that we've selected, there's going to be audio content. That content is going to be triggered based on the user's location through beacon technology, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit more in a couple minutes. But yeah, there's kind of what we consider the tour aspect. So if somebody just wants to learn, take the self-guided tour, get this great audio content, they can do that. And then we also have sort of a timeline part of the app where you can learn about the history of Independence. You will have the game that we talked about as sort of its own experience in the app, and then that camera integration with the photo filters that I mentioned. So like that timeline, this is part of our process, is how do we want to present this information? How do we want to lay it out? We have this great history of Independence. Do we want to have it kind of in this list view where you select the year and learn about what the significance of that year or that time in Independence history was? Do we want to kind of present it as text? So this is just kind of a rendering of part of our process, right, of deciding how we want to present this information and make it look. And then as far as the tour, the audio tour, we have kind of this narrator taking you through all of these destinations. So everybody comes in to this kind of landing page where there's some welcome content, a welcome audio message. You get an introduction from Kate, your tour guide. And then you can view a list of sites. So if you just want to browse through on your own and see, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to the CNA train depot? Do you want to go to Clinton Soda Fountain? You can kind of see what all the sites are and go to them. But then also, as you're traveling throughout the town, if you approach a destination that has a stop on the audio tour, you can get an alert that says this is nearby, and you can tap on the alert. It'll take you right to this page with the audio and text, images, any other content that we're going to have there. So that's kind of really how the tour experience works. You have multiple ways of getting the information. You can get the location-based content trigger. You can browse through on your own, so you might not necessarily have to be standing there to read about it, to listen to the audio, and to engage with that content. So I mentioned beacons a couple of times. What are they, right? They are Bluetooth transmitters. They're low-frequency Bluetooth transmitters, and we can customize the range on them, too. So as a person with the app on their phone approaches one of these devices, it'll just trigger a little notification via Bluetooth to let them know that's where they are. This is exactly what a beacon looks like. It's about the size of a deck of cards, very unassuming. There's a lot of different styles of beacons out there. There's very small ones, there's a little bigger ones. We like these beacons because, well, for a number of reasons. There's many benefits, but those particular beacons that we use have an 18-month battery life. They're very, unassuming. You can put it inside a museum at a display or at an entrance, to a site, even outdoors. They hold up pretty well. They're weather resistant. So they work for the variety of uses that our clients like. So we like these kinds of beacons for a number of reasons. We also offer GPS content triggering as another way that you can do location-based content in an app. And you can do those in conjunction with beacons or instead of. But beacons provide more precise location triggering. You can get a lot closer. You can have a range as close as 5 feet to in a museum or an indoor space. That's really beneficial versus a GPS trigger where you cast, a larger net, to catch people, and then you're subject to the variances in GPS accuracy, which there's a lot of factors involved with that. And also there's lots of a strain on the actual user's device when they're only relying on Bluetooth to get these really precise triggers rather than trying to access GPS location and tracking that way. So just circling back to the types of content that we're going to be having in our app. So these are the features, some of the features that are supported on our platform. As I mentioned, we're going to have audio throughout the tour, rich text that just allows you to format it, present it the way that looks best, images and galleries to show historic photos and give a perspective that they might not see on site. Videos are a possibility in the initial launch of the app. I don't think we have any plans for video content right now, but it's something that we can talk about incorporating later. It's a possibility on our platform. And the nice thing about our platform is that you can make changes over time. You can republish them instantly. You're not locked into it. So, you're not paying a sum to build an app and then it's there and it's stuck, right? And it's static, you can't change it. Our platform allows you to make changes over time, add new content, update things that, change, and keep it relevant. So, so some of these features you're gonna see in the initial version of the app. Some of them are something that we can look at incorporating later. We'll have social media integration to drive folks to your social media and, get familiar with Independence and follow you there, hopefully. Mobile giving and fundraising is an option. So if you do have any sort of campaigns that you want to raise funds for, that's something that we can incorporate directly into our apps. It makes it very easy for users to make a secure credit card donation while they're in the app. The GPS-enabled maps, along with interactive images and touchable hotspots. Those are basically two different mapping options where you can use a graphic map and tap on different parts of it to learn more. So if you have a map of Independence, you can actually tap on, a neighborhood and see what sites are there, or a GPS map, which would interact with their location, the user's location, and actually show them the sites nearby. And push notifications, again, another way to keep people engaged and interested and interacted. You can send out messages to people that have your app downloaded, and you can alert them to upcoming events, or if you publish new content in the app, hey, come back to Independence and check out our new audio stops. So just ways to keep them coming back and provide value. So the last feature, or the last really major component to the app project, is going to be the custom app design. And this is where we make the app completely unique to Independence. So no other app is going to look like yours. It's going to be consistent with your branding. It's going to have your fonts, your logos, your colors, all carried throughout it. So typically our custom theme designs have two different page styles. So we can have different looks within the app. And for this project, it's really nice because, as Kelly had mentioned, the game is going to have a really unique feel to it. It's going to have this kind of 8-bit Oregon Trail vibe, whereas the rest of the app is going to look more like, City of Independence, and with your colors and your branding, much more modern look. So we can do that with a custom theme design, have different sections of the app kind of have their own look and feel. And so we have a process where our designers will create a mock-up, and we can do feedback on that. And once the design mock-up is approved, we apply it to the project and testing. And that's really where we're at right now, is refining that mock-up, and so that we can apply it to the project. This was just an initial draft of what the design might be. So you'll see we've got that blue City of Independence color with the fonts. There's not too much going on here, but you'll see that it's gonna match your website, your branding. And then over to the right here we have that kind of Oregon Trail vibe going on with the kind of 8-bit graphics, the black background, very familiar. It's gonna really match that game feel. So that really is the project, and we're at a really exciting time right now where it's all kind of coming together, and months of planning and content gathering, and right now everything is being loaded into the builder. It's being tested, finalized. Designs are being drafted and approved, and we're really looking forward to getting it launched, soft launch in April. Do you guys have any questions?
Great, thank you. Oh my gosh, this is really awesome. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting to see all that's been going into this. Two questions, Eric. One, we're beginning our branding process, so how are those two going to intersect before we, put all this effort into design, making sure that it's consistent with our brand that we will be developing. And then, of course, the question always, how do we tell people about it? I mean, how do we get the word out there and get people using it and sharing it and telling their friends and engaging people in and outside of Independence?
Sure. To the first question, I actually asked that right before we came in.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we're working on this whole thing. It's a little whiles out, but how customizable is it? Once we get this built, can we change color schemes?
Yeah.
Can we change some logos? The answer is yes.
Okay.
So we will have that ability to do so when the time is right. Second, we met with OA Creative recently and went over the marketing campaign and plan to launch this, and made sure that the messaging was built in a number of different platforms to let people know what we've got out here. So it'll be a multi-stage different approach to that. Some of it will be local, so that when you get to a site, you'll have some signs, you'll have a recognizable logo that lets you know that you're at a beacon spot and how to download. So some of it will be rudimentary and on-site like that, while other stuff will be more global and part of our overall package and on our website and all of our push campaigns that we're doing.
Okay, Oregon Trail. I think a lot of people think these games are for kids. Do you know, or and maybe you don't know this information, what's the average gamer, I mean, the Oregon Trail person look like? I mean, who is that? Yeah, Sarah, Zach. Yeah, okay, but we need some more others besides you two. But, maybe talk, I think, linking it to that, to Oregon Trail, which is, obviously so popular and well known, but who can we expect to be that Oregon Trail audience? Sure. I mean, for those of you who aren't on,
big Oregon Trail fans.
Yeah, big Oregon Trail
So
gamers.
I can tell you a little bit about the average gamer. The average gamer actually is as likely to be female as they are to be male. They're an average age of 35 years old. Yeah. Moms actually play a huge number of games, and there are a lot of unexpected game players as well. And that's just with video games. That's not even including things like location-based games, escape rooms, board games. So in terms of the marketing for a game, it's pretty broad.
Yeah.
If you say we're going to play a game, we're going to do something that's interactive, that doesn't necessarily just mean kids anymore. You especially see that with the escape room movement, right? Has anybody played an escape room yet? No, not yet. Oh, you will soon, I promise you. I'm sure there's a bunch of them in Kansas City, which are almost entirely marketed to grown-ups. It's essentially like a room of puzzles. They're extremely popular, gameplay for grown-ups. Cool part about Oregon Trail is that the kids will like it because it's goofy and it's a game, but grown-ups will probably like it because there's some element of nostalgia involved. So it's something that will harken back to something that they recognize, and they'll think it's hilarious when they're dying of dysentery because they'll remember, I remember that from the 80s, whereas the kids will just say, what's dysentery? And they'll have to explain it. So I think the idea for Oregon Trail is, A, it's very recognizable, B, it kind of gets at that intergenerational connections.
All right, thanks so much.
Sure.
Other comments or questions from the council? All right, thank you.
One more.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't see you down there.
It seems like, we're right on the verge of well over 50% of the population is doing things mobile now. And so it may be up closer to 80. I don't know. It's getting to the point where everybody is using apps. Will this be a free app? It'll be a free app through the App Store.
Yes.
Okay. And at the sites, are we going to have hotspots, Wi-Fi? How are they going to access the internet? I know the Bluetooth will download things at each site or access things at each site, but obviously, some of the sites, they may be totally on cell phone. If we don't have Wi-Fi, if they are on Wi-Fi at those sites, then do they have to click on another hotspot or Wi-Fi to get online?
So with our native apps, which are that's what we call the apps that get downloaded to your device from Google Play and the App Store, those actually they work completely offline. So all of the content, the audio content, the game, that's all, you can do that
Offline.
in airplane mode, right? Yeah, there's very few features, things like GPS maps that do require connectivity, but beyond the initial download of the app, and that's really gonna speak to the marketing. You know, you want it on your website, you want it everywhere, you want people to download the app at their hotel or, you know, at home before their visit. If they have, you know, cellular connectivity, they can download it on site as well. But yeah, once it's downloaded, it's stored on their device and available offline.
Very good.
Yeah.
I had Oregon Trail on a early Mac back in the 1990s.
Anything else? Thank you, very, very exciting.
Me. Miss Adams? Fine, how are you? Want to step up here?
Sure, we're going to do for it.
So Killian, right?
Killian.
Yeah, and Adams.
Yes,
And you're from Boston, Mass.
I am indeed.
Okay, are you related to those other two?
Not that I know of.
Okay, and Killian.
Killian,
Did you
actually.
make the parade this year?
The parade?
Oh, they don't have it in Boston anymore?
What parade is this?
It's on the 16th of March, I believe.
Is this some sort of a sports ball reference? Because
No.
I
St.
know.
Patrick's Day.
What's this?
St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day.
Oh,
Oh,
lo and behold, the
No,
dawn
I know.
comes. Sure, and don't you know?
Oh, no. I did not actually. I've never been to a
sit
St.
down.
Patrick's Day.
Thank you
Is
very
that
much
all?
for
Oh,
not
wow,
being
that
in
was
Boston, Mass at all.
You know, all right.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have staff reports, the 2018 Street Overlay Program, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, as you all know, last fall we had renewal by our voters of our existing 1/2 cent street sales tax, and of course made that perpetual. So we're able to continue our street overlay program, our annual program, and tonight wanted Director of Public Works Tim Gramling to share with you what staff has identified as some projects for the upcoming year, but really to get council direction, as you may have tonight, about moving forward with this through the bid process and whatnot. So I will yield to Mr. Gramling.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Tim Gramling, Public Works Director. I believe you all were provided with a packet of the information that we've developed so far for this year's 2018 street overlay. I think it has a list and a map. So I was just going to basically refer to that. Hope you all had a chance to review that. And then we're just basically looking for some input on that, some feedback on that information. Really don't have a lot other to say other than I will say there is one minor correction. I think, I'm not sure if it's on the list, but on the map, Hardy is on there, shown from 23rd to 31st. During our utility coordination meeting, we found out that the water department was going to be doing some significant water line improvements along that street this next year. We didn't think we'd be able to wait long enough to let them finish those and then do the overlay, so we pulled that from the list for right now. And if it gets too late in the year and we can't do it, we'll add it on next year. But we thought it might be good to wait and let those improvements get done and then come back and do the overlay after the fact. So other than that, I will say too that this year's program is a little bit of a hybrid of the way that we used to put the program together and the new way we're looking at going forward with it. We did have to finish up a couple of areas that we had kind of done last year, partial subdivisions such as the Kentucky Hills area and the Cliffs were a couple of subdivisions that we had done some of the streets but not all of them. We wanted to go back and finish those up. But then we tried to incorporate a lot more arterial streets in this year's program. Before, we did about 75% of the program was local streets, residential, and about 25% was arterial or collectors. This year it's about 50-50, so we're trying to kind of transition to that to where we're concentrating more on the arterial and more major streets in the future. And of course, it's all going to be based on the actual condition of the streets as well, so we can put our money where it's needed the most as we go forward. So with that, I mean, we're looking to get this out for bid fairly quickly, and so we'll take any input you guys have, any feedback, and we'll take it and run with it.
Comments, questions?
Madam Mayor, what is the PCI index? What do these numbers mean?
That's the condition of the street based on, that was the pavement management system that we put into place where we hired the company to go out and rate the streets based on the condition. That is a number that's based from 0 to 100. So the lower the number, the worse condition it's in.
The lower the number, the worse condition
Yes.
it's in? Okay.
So
And
you
so-
can see most of those are fairly low.
And so,
Usually-
like, for example, just an example, East Bunshoe Road is number 1 on my list. Does that mean it's the first one to get worked on, or
No, it's just in the,
alphabetized?
it's just in the order. There is no particular order. It's more alphabetical than anything.
Okay.
And then, but there really is no particular order that it's listed in.
But reading the PCI, the higher the, reading the PCI, the lower the number,
The worst.
the more
condition.
likely it is it will get worked on first.
It just means it's in the worst condition. So the lower the number, the worse condition.
So
That's in.
who decides, do you decide what street goes first over another street?
We
How
use-
is that decided?
We usually leave that to the contractor to coordinate, because they'll do it based on kind of an area. They'll set it up so that they can, when they bid the project, they take that into account, mobilizing into an area to complete the streets. And so we usually work that out with them on how they feel like they can do it the most efficiently.
Okay. And 23rd Street is pretty bad in terms of potholes, and I know it's a state highway,
Mm-hmm.
and I know it's not on our list. How do we get 23rd Street fixed?
Anywhere out in particular, you,
There's a
West of
terrible-
Nolan Road.
Yeah, there's a really bad
Awful.
stretch right on the bridge between Pleasant and Maine, really? I guess.
Right by the old fire station there, Tim. Just ask my wife.
And
Yeah.
it continues on west, it really does.
Yeah.
It goes on west.
It was,
we can basically, we'll let MoDOT know, and they've been good about, usually if we bring that to their attention, they'll try to get it addressed.
That would really be good, because it's dangerously deep.
it's really hard to avoid some of those
It really is.
big pieces of asphalt that are
Chunks.
on.
And-
We'll bring it to their attention.
It's been a rough
Okay,
winter.
and, maybe I'm dreaming, but I thought we were gonna use some of the street money to do sidewalks. Or is that not in this?
This is just overlay,
Okay.
street overlay, where we go in and take off the top 2 inches of the existing street and replace it with new asphalt.
And so
Sidewalks
there's
is a
this
different program, yes.
Different program, so
Yes.
we're not giving up on that yet.
Right.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Those are coming.
Well, my understanding, it's not instituted till 2020.
Right.
Till the new street sales
Right.
tax goes into effect.
Correct, for the sidewalks.
And
Correct.
sidewalks, yeah, curbs.
Councilman Van Camp? Oh, I thought you were,
Have something you want?
Oh.
Oh, okay. Where'd you hear that at? Oh, the last meeting, okay. Excuse me. I want to commend you on this. I know the preparation, because we've been over this before, but it's 39th and Sterling too. They put in the new sidewalks, or the new curbs, and they tore up all around it in the street. So if you can put that down too. I see you got 39th, but I don't know if that runs in the same place.
39th and Sterling?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, we'll take a look at that, make sure it's gonna be a part of that.
And again, thanks for the adding curbs and sidewalks program.
Sure.
Doesn't fix everything, but at least we have a process just like this going forward.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilman Perkins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I like your thinking, Tim, on the major arterial selections and stuff like that. I've been kicking around the idea with the uptown market going in full swing and doing real well there. Councilman Doherty and I have kicked around the idea of looking at, maybe lack of a better word, a demonstration block, an area to where we can really focus and have some concentrated effort on making something look really sharp, make it look really good to demonstrate what we can do if we really get focused. Thought is College Street from 24 Highway to Nolan Road. That's a highly visible, highly traveled pedestrian and drive. Thought that would be something to take a good look at for curbs, sidewalks, drainage. It goes right up to the square, just a few blocks off from the uptown market, something that we can really focus and show some good consolidation of what the effort could look like with a project like that.
Okay.
Yeah, Councilman?
Thank you. I agree. Councilman Perkins and I have walked through that area,
And although there's some in much, much worse shape, would take tremendously bigger amounts of money, and some that are not as bad. This is kind of an average, we think, throughout the city that would take average amount of money to really slick it up and demonstrate to the public and the people in that area what could be done if we would concentrate in certain areas. And because this feeds from 24 Highway right up to the center of the downtown area, we think this would be, because it's so well traveled, this would be a great project to showcase what the abilities that we could do with getting some driveways fixed so they don't puddle big water. We have big sections that have beautiful sidewalks and stops and becomes gravel and mud. We have areas that have curbs, and then we go down and we have areas that have no curb. And it's not consistent at all. And it would take just a little bit of work to make it all consistent and really give it some curb appeal. And we'd certainly like to work with you and your staff on seeing if we can get something like this going this year. Okay. We could probably look at that as like a standalone project in and of itself outside of the overlay. So we'll try to take a look.
Sure. That would be acceptable.
I like the movement that we're making towards focusing on, the neighborhoods are always going to need attention, and we're, you know, and we owe it to our citizens who approve these taxes to make sure that we're fulfilling those obligations. And I love the process that we're using of evaluating the condition of every street in the city and prioritizing them that way. I guess I would be remiss if I did not say that this use tax, local use tax that's on the ballot next week, if we're fortunate to have the voters approve that, that's only going to help us with more money for these programs. So that is important. You know, I just keep going back to independence for all and such a focus around our gateways into the city, around our historic sites, around our commercial areas. You know, we just saw this beautiful comprehensive development plan and what what these areas could look like. And, you know, once we kind of finish up some areas that we've started on, I'd really like us to really focus on some of these most visible gateways into our city, and as the councilman has said, you know, really make them look top notch. I mean, really make a first class impression, get them, you know, all done, and you know, with plans for maintenance. And you know, I think that's really going to help us move a long way forward in our goals for all kinds of things. I mean, economic development, tourism, health and wellness, safety. I mean, all of these things are going to be improved when we, you know, can take that next step after, you know, this year's project and partnered with our other plans and projects that we have going to really make a big impact while we do these things. And they're great, they're needed, they look nice when we're done with them. I don't know that the community is really saying, wow, that, you know, that really made a huge difference in a particular area and really have that big impact zone that I think that we're envisioning. Mr. City Manager, you look like you want to say something.
No, just agreeing. As I recall, when we developed the Independence for All plan, this was a major area of consensus for the council, was trying to target those dollars in a way that the community could see. Not only are we addressing the need, using the data to say where it's the worst area, but also how do we hit these highly visible corridors where people, especially the presentation we just heard, bringing these visitors into our community as they access our key parts of the city, making sure that our portion, the public portion, presents as well as it could.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I hear from citizens about, I want a street fixed, I mean, these are probably number 1 and 2 of citizen calls is streets and sidewalks. And they don't generally say, it's the street in front of my house. They generally say, it's 23rd Street, it's Nolan Road, it's Lisa, I mean, it's, you know, these corridors where we're all traveling, getting around town and bringing people to town. So, you know, I think we're headed that direction, and, this is a great plan for this year, and hopefully next year, you know, with the additional dollars, hopefully we can continue moving in that direction.
And I will compliment Mr. Gramling. I know there was an area in Councilmember Doherty's district last year where we had gone into a subdivision but hadn't gotten that area, and focusing, as you're all saying, on these targeted key areas, and if we're there, making the greatest impact we can.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, we'll say, and part of what we're doing so that we don't, you know, it doesn't sound like we're just neglecting the residential areas. We're trying to look at a more strategic way of dealing with those, because they are lower volume streets. You can do different things to them than you have to with arterial streets. So we're exploring other types of treatments that we can do to still be able to address that, but stretch the dollars a lot farther and put a lot more of them in the arterial. So we're also doing that as well, and developing that, you know, as we look forward. I will point out one of the streets on here on the west side of the kind of you can see Westport. We looked at, we kind of did what you're talking about is the entire length of the street all the way down.
It doesn't look like a lot when you look at a great big map.
Yeah.
You know, they look at like these little teeny things, but that, you know, I didn't know, and there was a stretch of Truman Road that is pretty lengthy, so we're getting, I mean, I think we're moving in the right direction of what we're envisioning for sure.
Right.
And, you know, hopefully by next year, we'll be able to even do more of that. So
Mayor,
we'll make a big impact this year, yes.
if I can add on to what you're saying too, that just the way the mobility has changed, and a lot of people are wanting to walk to places now. You know, we got demonstrated College Street, but Walnut going up to the square. We got some really cool things happening up here, and just be able to take the kids out for a walk on a sidewalk that's decent enough to where you don't have to step in the traffic. Just those kind of thinking. So I think we're on the right track there.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, finally tonight, transit stop, another important transportation discussion, transit stop project update.
Back by popular demand.
Yeah, all righty.
Me again. Yeah, if you recall, back in September of last year, September 11th, 2017, at a study session, staff presented 20 locations to be considered for some transit stop improvements, and all of these were approved by the local or the regional transportation authority. So we wanted to kind of give an update on what's happened since then. Council did concur on those 20 locations, but I think also offered us to, or wanted us to take a look at a way to see if we could incorporate as many shelters as we could at as many of those stops as possible. So that was kind of what we've been doing. We've been out in the field gathering the data at all 20 locations. It took a while to get around to all of those and collect the data, do the measurements and that type of thing. So we have finished that field work, and we've done an estimate based on that and the existing condition at most of those sites. And so it's helped us then to determine how many locations we think we'll be able to do shelters at. But it's not just about the cost really with these shelters. Other than the cost, there are also other criteria that we have to look at, other considerations that affect whether a location is a good location for a shelter or not, and how many we can do. So some of those, you can see there under the selection criteria, some of the things we have to consider is what's available right-of-way, because we don't want to get outside of that. More right-of-way is more costly, more time-consuming to do for the project. We also have to look at the existing grades, the elevations and the slopes around the areas, and you know, what that does to the complexity of it, and whether or not there's more excavation, or if you have to build retaining walls or something like that to make them accessible. Then we have to consider the ridership. Does it have enough riders to justify having a shelter? And then the other thing that we took into consideration were future projects. We wanted to try to maximize not only the money for this project, but also the money for some projects that we've got coming up, some of those complete streets projects that we're looking at doing in a couple of years. And what we wanted to do was avoid putting something out there now that was either going to limit that future project or possibly even have to cause us to redo something that we're doing with this money. And so we wanted to get the biggest bang for our buck. So we took that into account as well on selecting these locations. So after all of that, we selected 3 locations that we think are good locations for this project, for this transit stop improvement project. Spring and 24 Highway, which is at the southwest corner of Spring and 24, right next to the fire station, near the McCoy Park, Station 1, and the Truman Library. and Cedar in Kentucky is the second one it's right next to the Fairmount Community Center. And then the third one would be at Pleasant and Walnut. We would look at putting it right in front of that facility there on Pleasant. We also did look at some future locations. We looked at a couple of locations on 40 Highway and a couple or three on 24 Highway. Those were the locations where we're going to be doing the Complete Streets project, so we thought it might be better to wait and do those as part of that project and pick a better selection that'll fit with that project. And so we think that by doing that, we can maximize the money for both of these, all of this funding that we're getting for both of these programs. In looking at some of the costs involved, we are basically looking at 3 types of shelters to put at these locations, basically small, medium, and large. These are the typical shelters that you would see at the types of improvements that we're doing for Independence. For the sake of estimating, we pretty much use the type 2, the middle one there, to assume that would be the typical one we'd be able to do. It's still going to depend. We still have some more work to do to determine the exact shelter we would use at each location. Some may have to be a little bit smaller, so we may have to go to this type 3 one, which is a 7-foot long one, and then in some cases we may be able to do the larger one, but it's really going to be dependent on things like utility relocations and and just whether or not we can fit them in the space that we've got with the right-of-way. When you start looking at accessibility issues and that kind of thing, it starts to really dictate what you can or can't do. So the things that impact the cost when it comes to the shelters are, first of all, the size of the facility. Obviously, the bigger it is, the more it costs. The construction complexities, so the excavation that you may have to do and the grading that you'll have to do around the site, footings that you have to put in, signage, utility relocations, some of the amenities that you have to put that we want to put at some of these sites, like trash cans and benches. Just to give you an example, a typical trash can for these types of shelters is $1,500. So it's not your average trash can that you have at home. But that's one of the challenges that we deal with on these types of facilities. Other types of needs that you might have that we might want to look at and that might vary from site to site are like electricity requirements. If you're going to put lights on these, how far is it to the nearest power source, and what are the difficulties in getting those electric lines to these for the lighting, and which is actually a security issue at these locations. Signage, bicycle racks, and art are other things that we're going to have to consider doing. We didn't really look at bicycle racks at any of these because that's usually for a really high volume shelter or stops. So we're assuming that most of these don't have that kind of ridership at any of these, so we didn't really include them in the estimate at this time. Other considerations that we keep in mind while we're doing the design, because as we're doing these, some of the things we do may impact some of these, and these would be affecting the operating costs on the maintenance and that type of thing. In terms of the trash service, cleaning, we might want to consider types of materials that are easier to clean or harder to, or a little more resistant to things like graffiti and that type of thing. But then as far as other potential impacts that we want to consider that could affect the cost, or like site distances on where you locate that shelter. If it's on the corner, you don't want to block the site distance of vehicles that are pulling up to those intersections. We also have to consider the surrounding area. We don't want to have an adverse impact on the adjacent properties, whether it's homes or businesses or that type of thing. I put this one here. You can read all those regulations if you want to, but but this is just an idea of the things. These are all the check boxes that we have to make because we are using federal funds. We're using $150,000 of their money, so we have to meet their requirements. But just to kind of summarize, the first one that you see there basically just says you have to have an accessible route between the shelter and the boarding and the lighting areas. The second one says you have to have a minimum clear space around the boarding and the lighting area, basically, getting on and off the bus safely. The third one is you have to have a certain minimum area, clear floor space inside the shelter itself. And then the fourth one says that you have to have an accessible route between the boarding and the lighting area and adjacent streets or sidewalks. In other words, to the surrounding area, to and from the surrounding area to get in, that's accessible, it meets ADA requirements. So basically, with that, we're just looking for consent to move forward with these locations that we are proposing here, and feedback on the shelter too, and that's the one we're going to try to design around, but kind of see if that's okay with the council to do that, and if there are any other additional amenities that I haven't mentioned that you think might need to be accounted for. Right now, we're looking at, as far as a time frame, it looks like we're going to be getting our plans to the Transit Authority. They have to review the plans before we can put them out for bid. We're hoping to do that around late May or June, and however long it takes them to review that and get back to us, we're hoping to have this project out by late July or August as far as bid and start construction. So it's kind of the time frame on that. Any other questions? Or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Tim, really, $187,000 just for 3 shelters? Am I reading that
Well, it's
right?
3 shelters and 20 stops. So
Okay, so you're putting concrete pads at the 20 stops,
And
plus
benches.
you're doing 3
Right,
shelters.
Right.
Okay.
I have a question. Is this all federal funding, or is there some local funding involved with this? Or was there some local, I'm just not remembering.
150,000 is the grant from
Right.
FDA, and then 37,000 is from CDBG funds.
Okay.
match.
Which is federal.
Yeah,
So,
but we can use that for the match. It
right,
qualifies,
okay.
Yeah.
So the 150 is from,
From the Federal Transit Authority.
okay.
So it's-
So, I mean, it all is all federal funds, just from 2 different
Yeah.
sources that are coming in.
Right.
So did we have to provide matches for that?
No, basically, we get
Yeah.
the CDBG funds qualify as a
Okay,
match.
I gotcha, okay, all right. My question that occurred to me is, would these shelters be subject to the 1% for the arts portion? I don't know, I think that's local. I mean, I think Mark, maybe we can look at that, because I believe that was any public construction would be, would contribute 1% for public art, but I don't know if you don't need to give me an answer now, but that might be something to look at. I mean, I think, to me, just having something where there was nothing is a huge, huge improvement for all 20 of these sites, and having these shelters is great. I mean, the trash, the cleanliness, the security are super important. I just think we really need to make those things a big priority for these shelters. I mean, for all of our stops, but particularly where we're investing, these significant dollars to put in these nice shelters, and people deserve to have them. They deserve to have a place to stand out of the weather and, sit while they're waiting, have the ADA requirements met, but, the trash and the safety are really, really important in my mind.
I do have one more question.
Okay.
Lights, though? I don't remember any of our shelters having lights, and our buses don't run at night, so.
Yeah, that's one of the questions on, I
They
think
do
in the
run in
winter.
the morning when
in the
it's
winter
dark.
You're right, you're right.
In the wintertime, it's shorter
Yeah.
days, so you will have some periods
Yeah.
of light. So
Okay.
that is a question, I mean, because, a portion of the year you may not need them, so.
Well, but you're right, I had forgotten in the mornings.
But it is a costly, amenity to have, so.
And do we have them now? I don't remember any
don't
shelters
know.
having lights.
I don't know if any of them.
I don't think so.
The transit center, of course, but
Well,
we don't have bluntly, we don't have a lot of robust shelters right now,
Right.
which is
Okay.
the point of this program, yeah.
Right, yeah,
Mayor,
yes.
this is related but not related. The bus stop that we have at Brookside and 24 Highway there, that's a pretty good sized shelter, if you will. It's concrete.
Yeah.
brick. I mean, it looks like a mausoleum, the way it's designed and stuff, to be quite frank with you. But it's not always kept up as well as it should be for being on a major thoroughfare and for as large as amount of usage that is. Who maintains and takes care of that? Is that us? That's
KCATA.
Okay.
I'm told.
There's a group meeting, and Tom Scannell and Charlie and I are part of that group about 24 highway, exploring possible BRT, bus rapid transit on 24 highway, and that shelter in particular is, was one that was discussed. I mean, it kind of does have a kind of neat historic feel to it, but I think that's kind of a different discussion because that's all KCATA stuff. But
thought I'd step up on it now since we were talking about buses. Okay. Fair enough.
Councilman?
Wonder if you can put any solar on those to light them up.
That's what I was going to ask.
We could beat you to it, didn't I?
That's what I was going to ask.
And cameras.
And cameras. The thing is, what's the difference standing on a slab and not having a trash can versus having a trash can in a shelter? What's the difference on security standing on a slab versus a shelter? So just because we put a shelter up, you can't equate it to, well, now I got to buy a trash can, and now I'm not safe, and now I need lights. If we're going to run a bus system, we need to get all in and do a first-rate bus system, and not have people stand in a muddy hole in the weeds, in the sleet, in the rain. So 3, although it's disappointing we're only doing 3, it's at least finally a step in the right direction for these. They need to have a digital readout to tell them which bus is coming and what time. They need to have lighting on it when it's dark out from storms or early in the morning to make it safe, or even at night. You're right, they don't run at night, but just have the lights on at night to make sure there's no one in there and to give it some type of a safe feeling to it. So sadly, these are just the costs that go with ridership. There is no public transit system on the planet that pays for itself. It's all just flat has to cost us. It's the cost of doing business. To be a first-class city, we've got to have a first-class transit system. So we just got to buck it up and start paying for it.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Just another comment on solar, because I was going to bring that up. I don't know if it's feasible, but, a couple solar panels and an inverter to convert it to AC with a battery, some sort of battery system like MoDOT uses on a lot of their signs, would allow for people to plug in to charge their mobile devices and light an LED light probably most of the night. I mean, LEDs don't take hardly anything. So it wouldn't require then any hookup or any.
Right, and that's something we could weigh the cost of to see if the
Save some
connection
money
is more
there.
expensive than that, it might make sense.
Right. So, I mean, it's something to consider.
Right, okay.
Okay. Yes, Councilman?
So am I getting this right? We want to add things? We don't want to go ahead? I mean, you came here to say, I want to do this, and you want us to tell you to go ahead and do it,
Right.
but we want to put other things in on it?
Well, Mr. Gramley asked for consent on location, shelter type, and additional amenities. So these are the additional amenities.
So are we going to have solar?
Well, it's something we'll evaluate and see, I think it's gonna probably come down to the cost and see if it's cheaper to connect it to the electric source, we might look at that if it's cheaper to do solar.
So
it might be a way to mitigate some extra costs.
So is this, what I'm asking is, can we change it?
Yeah,
Any parts of it?
yeah, because we're still in the design.
Any or all parts of it?
Yeah. I mean, it's up to the council. We just go the direction.
Well, I just
mean,
heard
with
so many
Right.
questions on how it was going to be and everything. I didn't think we
I
seemed to be ready to go forward.
think maybe we've made our priorities clear about safety, cleanly, keeping them clean, secure, those things, attractive. So do you need more from us in order to move forward? And you'll be coming back to us again with some final,
And that's what those kind of things
Yeah.
we've included in the estimate that we've done so far. The only thing we haven't looked at would be the solar, you know, and it might be, some of these might be cheaper, if it's cheaper to do that than to hook to the electric source. So it's something,
And-
that's one part we haven't considered yet.
and if it does qualify for our 1% for the arts, arts can be a lot of things. I mean, the commission would, you know, if it does meet the criteria, would have opportunity to look at if it would be applied to those sites, which is sort of, you know, the first choice, and then, you know, the second choice would be apply that funding to another site. So that's another
And that might
possibility as
need
well.
additional direction, since we're dealing with 20 locations, how, you know, how you might want to
Right.
deal with that.
So it's all open. I mean, we can develop, because like the Councilman Doherty said, I want to move ahead with a first-class project. And, I mean, we have to bite the bullet somewhere, and I don't think we're ready at this point. I mean, I think it's a great deal. You know, I thought the 20 slabs was wonderful, and now you've come up with even additional stuff, and I really appreciate it. I just want to be able, other than here, to say to you, da, 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 da. I mean, I want to come into your office and, you know, and talk about this like we do other things, you know?
All right.
All right.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. City Manager, anything else this evening?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Keeping anything or taking?
I'm going to take off.